And this is typical basically for everybody who works on X-Plane. Almost none of us are computer programmers by trade, but we are just enthusiastic pilots. I think everyone on the team does have a pilot's license. So we are just very enthusiastic about flying. We just love airplanes and want to make a simulator that gives you an idea of what it is to be a pilot and to fly a real airplane. And to do that, in X-Plane 11, we ship a very nice fleet of default aircraft. So I know many users don't really care for the aircraft that come with the simulator because they are very focused on the high-end aftermarket add-ons or those crazily detailed airliners you can buy, and that is fine. That exists for X-Plane too. So there's also add-on makers for X-Plane, quite a lot actually. But we are very proud of the aircraft that we ship with X-Plane because they are of a consistently high quality that I think is better than default aircraft for any other simulator. So with the default set of X-Plane, you get a Cessna, a Baron, and different airliners, and a military plane, and a helicopter, and a glider. So we try to give you a broad set of different aircraft of every category, so you can experience different kinds of flying. And as you can see here, that's our Boeing 747, the jumbo jet. The 747, all the cockpits are very highly detailed and highly functional. So the radios down here and the pedestal work, and in the overhead panel you can switch on all the fuel pumps for all the 6 different fuel tanks that a 747 has. And the flight management computer works. You can enter a flight plan, load and approach, all that stuff. So we are very, very proud of the default fleet, also because it delivers a really good performance. The aircraft are very detailed but very easy on the frames, on the frames per second. Yeah, those are just a few screenshots of our default aircraft. So if you look at the instruments they are really modeled in 3D. It's not just a texture. They actually have a depth to them. They have the glass that is a little bit reflective. So this is the modeling standard that you get with all the aircraft. So this is our F4 Phantom. You can actually go supersonic in the F4, and you feel the shift of the center of lift. So where the most lifting action on the wing is, that actually changes in supersonic flight and gives the aircraft a nose down tendency once you go across the sonic barrier, and you can feel that really when flying this aircraft. The 737 is our default airliner. As you can see, there's also a pushback truck, so we have ground services on the airports as well. If you're in a gate position, you can call for the stairs and the trucks and the pushback. We are also very proud of our new user interface. Everyone who has used older X-Plane versions, X-Plane 8, X-Plane 9, the user interface, I'd say it was very functional, but also hard to understand. It was not really easy to use. And with X-Plane 11, we made this, which I think is very beautiful, graphic user interface where you can just grab the slider and change the weather, and you instantly get a picture of what it's going to look like. You have this grid view of all the airplanes you have available. Setting up your joystick, that was complicated in older X-Plane versions. It's now very easy because you get this picture of what your controls look like, and you instantly see, oh, this is button number 11, this is axis number 3, and that makes it very easy to configure your controls just as you like. And X-Plane 11.10 now also supports profiles for aircraft, so you can set up your controls in one way for flying a helicopter and in a different way for flying an airliner, so that you have the specific buttons do different things depending on the aircraft you fly. So here's the direct comparison. This is what the weather menu in X-Plane 10 looked like. I mean, you have a lot of settings, you can do everything. And this is what it looks like in X-Plane 11. So those two screens do exactly the same thing. but here you can actually see what is going on. Oh, I have a cloud layer. Oh, it's raining. And this makes it very, very easy to set up the flight like you like it. The rendering engine is probably the most important feature of X-Plane 11 compared to previous versions because of a technique that is called physically based rendering. And that's not something that we invented ourselves, but it's something that has become like a standard in the computer game industry. So if you look at popular big video games like the shooters and Battlefield and what else there is, they all use physics-based rendering nowadays. And what is great about this is that it makes making great models, 3D models of an aircraft or a jetway really interact with the world, because what it allows the artists to do, they cannot only make a texture, so they cannot only say, okay, this part of the airplane is white and that part of the airplane is blue, but they can actually define a material and material specifications for a surface. So they can say, okay, this part of the model, this is metal, and the other part, the tire, that is rubber, and the part of the jetway or this hose here, this is some kind of plastic or whatever. And by giving a material a reflectiveness and a surface roughness, whether the surface is very polished or whether it's rough, really changes the way the light interacts with the 3D model. And this is how we get this this great immersion that you look at a thing in a cockpit and you immediately recognize, oh, this is leather or this is plastic, because it just looks right, interacts with the light. So not only gives us that the possibility to interact with light correctly, but it also allowed us to make correct fog. So if you take a look at this screenshot, you will notice, so this is probably a foggy morning in, I think this is Hong Kong, and the further out you go from the way, from where your airplane is positioned, you notice that the colors get fainter and fainter, and back here everything is just kind of gray. So this is a forest. It's probably trees over here that are green, but when they get absorbed by the fog, everything gets kind of gray. So this is the result of actually simulating the moisture in the air as it takes out the colors. And when people change from FSX to X-Plane, what we often hear is, FSX, the colors are vibrant, everything is very bright, and they change over to X-Plane and they say, it looks kind of dull, everything is kind of gray. And then I say, well, play with the visibility settings, play with the fog, how much you actually want. And as a real pilot, what I say is FSX, the vibrant colors that FSX has, you get that only one day in the year, and that is in January, when it's 25 degrees below zero and there's absolutely no moisture in the air. If you take off on a January morning where it's 25 below zero and then you climb out and look out, yes, when there's no moisture in the air, yes, then the colors look like FSX. But every other day of the year, when you have moisture in the air, it looks like X-Plane. You get, the higher you go, the further you can look out, the more washed out the colors get with the distance. And this is exactly what the fog model of X-Plane does. Here you can see another example of the material, the physics-based rendering, because this old American Airlines livery on the MD-80, they didn't actually paint it. It's just the metal. It's brushed, and using that in X-Plane 11, you get really great reflections. You can see the reflection of, for example, the yellow line on the taxiway on the aircraft. So enough with the aircraft, let's look at the scenery. X-Plane ships with what is now 5,600 3D airports all over the world. And now, of course, X-Plane, as I told you, it's a very small team. We're not a big company. So we couldn't possibly make 5,600 airports ourselves. So what we did is we have a website, a web service that is called the X-Plane Gateway, and it gives users a very easy tool, the word editor, to create scenery from a bunch of objects that we ship. So you have objects for terminal buildings, for hangars, for stairs, for fuel trucks, all the stuff you would find on an airport. And with Word Editor, it is really easy to design an airport that has all the buildings, all the hangars, everything in the correct place. And there's 3,700 people all over the world who do that, who modeled their home airport, and actually every week we get about 50 submissions of new airports to the Scenery Gateway. And we have a moderator there that looks at the scenery, compares it to, I don't know, satellite imagery, Google Earth or whatever. And if the airport actually does look like the real thing, it gets approved, and with the next update of X-Plane, everybody gets it. So with every update of X-Plane, you get tons of new airports. So right now, 12,500 different scenery packs have been uploaded, and we have this amazing number of 3D airports now. And just to give you an idea, so this is all, these are not custom modeled buildings. This is just assembling the objects that X-Plane ships. And you can build airports with I mean, look at all the detail. Look at the stairs and the baggage truck here and everything. People build really realistic looking airports with that. And so if you arrive at one of those 5,600 airports anywhere in the world, this is the quality you get. And this is, as I said, without any add-ons. It's just you get an X-Plane update, you get all of those airports. All right, now let's look at the X-Plane version that is in beta right now. Let me briefly talk about the version numbers of X-Plane, because that sometimes causes a bit of confusion. So the major version number of X-Plane right now, of course, is X-Plane 11. And of this X-Plane 9, 10, 11, you can think of, it basically works the same as it did back when the Microsoft simulator was still developed. So every 3 or 4 years, you get a new major version with a lot of new technology. And as I said, we do that about every 3 or 4 years. And this is the only update that you actually buy. So if we go from X-Plane 10 to X-Plane 11, you buy a new version of X-Plane. But, and here's the difference to the FSX or flight simulator world. During those 3 years in between, we actually continually improve on the base simulator, and we release about 2 updates every year, and that is what this 0.10 version number behind it means. So unlike the flight simulator, where you get only a new version every 3 or 4 years, with X-Plane, you basically get a free update multiple times a year. And as I said, we roll new scenery, new objects, and in the case of X-Plane 11.10, also major improvements to the systems, which I'm going to talk about now. So basically, the easiest way to remember, the number behind the comma is free, every update, no money, just download. And the version number before the comma, every 3 or 4 years, that's the only time we want money from you. All right, physics and systems. As I told you, there's a overpowered, totally crazy machine that I'm scared to fly. It is a really absolutely crazy aircraft, but it has a purpose in X-Plane, and that is it has the PT6 engine, the Pratt & Whitney PT6 engine. That's a turboprop you find in a lot of aircraft. That's what powers the King Air, the Cessna Caravan, the Pilatus Porter, the Piper Meridian. all these airplanes all have this kind of engine. So it is by having access to one of those engines and so that we can really play with it, we were able to make the model in X-plane of the turboprop engine very, very accurate. So because we have access to the real thing, the representation of the engine is really accurate. Same thing for the piston-powered prop aircraft. We used to have a Cessna 400, 428 X-ray, where I got most of my flying on. So everything that is with a piston propeller aircraft is based on this Cessna 400. We have a retired Army helicopter pilot who is our consultant for the OH-58. So he really helps us to get the helicopter flight model in X-plane right. And we also have a retired Phantom pilot who used to fly the F4 and who helps us to get the military jets right. And we updated the pressurization, so the pressurized cabin model in X-plane based on real flight experience and real failures, because in the Lancer Evolution that we fly, we had already 3 pretty catastrophic pressurization failures, and I tell you, X-plane simulates everything but the ear pain. So we really haven't found a way to make your ears hurt, but everything else works in X-plane like it does on a real plane. So vector-based flight dynamics, yeah, this is something that happened now in X-plane 11.10. As I said, with an update, we not only ship many airports or so, but we actually make the core, the engine of the simulator much better. So the biggest change in X-plane 11.10 is that we can now interact with airflow from all directions over the wing. And especially good is you can now fly backwards in X-plane 11.10. You think, okay, flying backwards, why would that be important? This is stupid. Well, of course you can, in a helicopter you can hover backwards, and then all the airflow over the helicopter is from the wrong direction, obviously. But also in an airplane, if you just imagine a windy day and you're taxiing to the runway, and of course the runway is oriented upwind, so while you're taxiing parallel to the runway to get to the starting location, you are taxiing in a tailwind, and that means you have an airflow coming over your aircraft from the wrong direction, from the back end. And during those windy situations, the interaction of the wind with the flight controls, all of that works correctly in X-plane now. And finally, we not only simulate the physics of aerodynamics, but also of the systems in the aircraft, for example, the electrical system. And that change that came in X-plane 11.10 is something that I experienced myself. So I was flying an old Piper Cherokee PA-28, and I came in at night in this very old aircraft, and I was taxiing down, so I landed on the runway and I took a left turn on a taxiway, and it was at night in an uncontrolled field, and that airport only had lights on the runway but no lights on the taxiways. And I did the left turn and I had the landing light on and the taxi light on, and it was so dim and so dark and I could not see where I was going. And I was really getting frustrated because I couldn't see where I was taxiing. And then I noticed when I pushed the throttle in a little bit, so just give the engine a little bit more RPM, then whoop, the lights would suddenly go brighter. So the reason was, well, the lights were draining the battery, and at idle RPM, the alternator, the generator on the engine could not generate enough power to keep the lights bright. And if you increase the RPM and the engine spun up a little bit, suddenly you get the voltage came back to 12 or 13 volts, and whoop, the lights went bright again. I could see where I was taxiing. And after that, the next day, I knew, we need this in Explain. So, and this is how Explain is improved. This is how new features make it into Explain. One of us has an experience on a flight and then notices the next day, I wonder if I can get Explain to do this. So that's how we work. Alright, the next improvement in Explain 11.10 is of course the avionics, and that is something that I mainly work on. So all the airplanes that ship with Explain 11 have one kind of navigation equipment, obviously. The general aviation aircraft have this GPS that is based on the Garmin, obviously, and the airliners like the 737 and the MD-80 have a flight management computer. And now with Explain 11.10, we're adding this to the default fleet. So this is a general aviation glass cockpit that we call the X1000, obviously because it's based on the real-life Garmin G1000. And as you can see here, it's a dual screen setup, primary flight display, multifunction display. That gives you all the primary flight instruments, and it gives you a map with the topography and all the waypoints and VORs and the flight plan and everything that you need. And I very much needed that for my students. As I told you, I'm an instrument flight instructor, and there's things that I would like my students to know that I cannot actually safely do in the actual airplane. I'll get to that in a minute. Just let me say, the problem with the real G1000 is there's like 23 million different configurations. So whatever we do, there's always going to be someone who comes to us and says, my airplane does it differently. This label is blue, it should be red instead. So to my defense, what I programmed, this is based on the Cessna 400 that I have the most experience with. So this is what I used as my reference. It of course works in both the 2D panels and in the 3D cockpit. And if you're building your own home cockpit, then you can extract the screens, or it is compatible with hardware bezels where you have hardware for the actual knobs and buttons you push. So you can either use it on a single screen, or you can build your home cockpit setup with it. That is what the PFD looks like, and it has a couple of options. What I care most about is that I can do different failure simulations, because there's no real safe way to do that in the actual airplane. I mean, when I'm flying with the student, I don't really go into the to the breaker panel and fail the system. Right? Just so that the student can experience what the failure looks like. So if it ever looked like this in the real airplane, I would be very worried. So, and actually to safely train this, this is an air data computer failure, or this is an AHARS, an attitude heading reference system failure. So this kind of failure, you can never actually train with a student in an actual airplane. And this is why it's important that this kind of thing works correct in the simulator. Then, as I said, of course, there's a lot of different configurations on a real unit. So we ship in Explain the Cessna 172 because it's, of course, the most popular trainer, but other people, add-on makers who create aircraft for Explain, of course, can make different configurations. So we support the regular fixed pitch prop and the constant speed prop and a turbocharged airplane and a turboprop configuration like Cessna Caravan, for example, and a twin engine configuration like the Beach Baron. And of course, it has all the navigation features that the rest of Explain also has. You can load approaches, zits and stars, and you get all the different approach types. I guess probably no one knows what all these acronyms mean, and that's exactly my point. Most of my students don't know that stuff either, so I direct them to Explain and say, hey, Explain can teach you what all of these different things do. Go practice. So yeah, that's just a few screenshots in the 3D cockpit, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Yeah, you can load terrible weather, of course, and then you get the weather radar picture on the map, or you can fail one side, and then it reconfigures itself to just work on one side with a little inset map. Yeah. Alright, so much for avionics. Now let's look at the scenery that we're shipping in X-Plane 1110. And as I already said, for these thousands of airports that the volunteers build, we now give them a lot more objects to work with in their scenery. And I'm very proud that we added a couple of objects that the Germans on our team thought was very important for the Netherlands. So,
for the Germans too.
Alright, so we have a lot of different vehicles and objects that you can add to the scenery, like those glider trailers and tower objects and hangars and very environmentally friendly hangars with solar panels on top, and German road signs and fueling stations and barriers and all kinds of stuff that you need. And these objects are used throughout the scenery. This is what an auto-generated city looks like in X-Plane. So these buildings that you see here, they were not hand-placed by a human. But what happens here is we use OpenStreetMap data for the road grid, and OpenStreetMap tells us this is an industrial area, and this is a residential area, and this is a 4-lane road, or this is a 2-lane road, and then we automatically generate this kind of city that you see here. OpenStreetMap also tells us whether the building is small, whether it's like 1 or 2 stories, or whether it has, I think, nine stories or so. And based on that information, we create cities that look like this. And depending on what OpenStreetMap says, this is what a commercial area would look like. Yeah, the guy who does the most of the graphics programming in X-Plane, his name is Ben. So we felt we should have a supermarket for him. So that's the Benny supermarket. So this is the kind of scenery objects that you find throughout the X-Plane world. Alright, so this is what an auto-generated city looks like. So you recognize the neighborhoods, you recognize the road grid, obviously, but if you look at an iconic city, then you're getting the skyline, but you're not getting specific buildings, or what we call landmarks. So starting with X-Plane 1105, we have been adding iconic landmarks to the scenery. So we are very proud to ship this city now. Which city is it? London. Right. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, this is what I just said was auto-generated. So this is just an auto-generated road grid. And combined with that, we now put the landmarks. So you recognize immediately, oh, it's not a generic city, it actually is London. And that's what it looks like when it interacts. As you can see here, the Eye of London it interacts with the rest of the scenery. And of course, works at night as well. Which city is that? Sydney. Yeah, the Opera House gives it away, but look at the detail on this bridge. Yeah, so this is what the landmarks for Sydney will look like. Again, the tall buildings are auto-generated, and the harbour bridge and the Opera House is a landmark object that, of course, works day and night. Which city is that?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Okay, that was fairly easy. So we have objects for all the famous hotels in Las Vegas. And what happened here actually was someone started to make the airport, and we got a really good airport scenery for Las Vegas. And then the guy said, I'm not finished. I mean, we have Vegas Airport, but it's not Las Vegas unless we have some of the hotels. So he just went crazy and built all the hotels for Las Vegas. Which city is that?
Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah, that's right. That is Chicago. Famously, the Sears Tower, which used to be the tallest building in the world, right here. As you can see, some of the buildings have helipads on top of them, so you can land with a helicopter. Yeah, very famous view of Chicago, and as you can see here, we're not historically accurate. This airport makes feel it doesn't exist anymore in the real world. There's a park there now, the runway is gone. Some of the terminal buildings are still there. But in X-Plane you can actually still use the airport if you want to. Yeah, so this is what the streets of Chicago look like. Obviously also great at night. Which city is that? That's a little harder.
Dubai?
Dubai, exactly. That is Dubai. So this is the building that replaced the Sears Tower as the world's tallest building, I think. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but it is so tall that some days it actually sticks up through the clouds. Yeah, another famous building in Dubai, and what you can see here, you can see the X-Plane lighting engine at work, so you can see the reflection of the sun in the building. And again, this is no texture. This isn't yellow because someone painted yellow or orange color into the windows. No, it's a definition of a glass surface, of a glass material, and the X-Plane lighting engine will give you the correct reflection based on the sun. So we have a little video showing Las Vegas, obviously, just to give you a little bit of an overview of the scenery. So it's of course the international airport, but it is so close to the city, right? So the airport is built insanely close to the city center, actually. Yeah, see, that's what an airport scenery looks like. We see all these little vehicles going along the road. So if you define airport scenery, you can also define the roads for all the airport support vehicles. Yeah, and this is ground service. Not only works on your own aircraft, but also these ground service vehicles also service the AI aircraft. So if an AI aircraft just lands at an airport and parks there, then the swarm of vehicles will appear with the fuel and catering and everything. Yeah. Austin's vegan food, so if you look closely at the labels everywhere in the scenery, you will recognize some of our names. Oh, and this is the Sikorsky 76, that's the default helicopter that ships with X-Plane. So if you fancy a challenge, you can load the Sikorsky helicopter and try to land on one of the land on one of the helipads in Chicago. This is 757, that's actually an add-on. The New York hotel.
The auto gates are not working.
Sorry?
The auto gates are not working.
Depends on which scenery you're using. So we have an auto gate feature built in X-Plane, but not every add-on scenery uses that. That is right. Alright, so everything I showed you up until now you can download today. Now I'm going to talk about something that is not currently in beta right now, but that is currently in development, but you can already try it over in the main museum building at the Aerosoft booth, and that is virtual reality. So this is what X-Plane looks like after we had 6 or 7 beers, I think. No, what it actually is, this is the image that is projected into a virtual reality headset. So the way it works is, to get the real 3D effect, of course your left eye and your right eye get slightly different views. And then it is displayed on the screen, and you look at it through a lens system that cancels out this distortion to give you an image that looks the correct distance away from you, so you can really feel that the panel is nearer to you, closer to you than the surrounding scenery. It gives a really good perception of depth. And if you haven't already tried it, at the Aerosoft booth we have a setup where you can put those glasses on, and if you look at this image through those glasses, what you see is an impression that looks like you're actually sitting in the cockpit. What we wanted it to be very easy to set up, so once you have the hardware, the only thing you need to do in X-Plane is check one checkbox. There's really not much setup you have to do, and once you have that, you get this amazing degree of freedom, because you cannot only look straight at the panel, but you can also turn your head all the way, look at the back, look into the cabin, stick your head out the window even, or crouch down and look below the panel to find the parking brake handle in the 172 that's below the panel. And this freedom of movement really adds to the whole experience, because you're not looking at a screen anymore. The screen is attached to your head, so wherever you look, wherever you move, you're looking at the actual thing in the cockpit. You can also leave the cockpit and teleport yourself into the scenery and look at the airplane from the outside. And again, if you're standing next to the airplane, because of the 3D effect, everything appears the right size. So if you walk up to the 747, the tires are actually this tall. You get a feel for how big this thing is, because you can walk up to the tire, and then wearing your headset, you can look up into the gear bay. Yeah, you actually can look into the gear bay of the 747 and get a feeling for how huge this airplane is. So when you're back inside the cockpit, you have full 3D cockpit manipulation. So every single button or switch and dial in the 3D cockpit you can touch with your hand controllers, and can turn knobs or flip switches or touch the throttle and move it like this. So now, of course, the question is, what happens to the rest of the cockpit hardware? Do I only use virtual reality, or do I want more physical cockpit hardware? And the answer is, you can combine it. It's as it says, no joystick, yoke or pedals are required. You can fly only using your hands in the game, and then you're just reaching, well, essentially you're reaching out into the air and manipulating a yoke that only exists virtually. So you're just using your hand in the air. But X-Plane supports combining hardware with virtual reality. So you can mount a yoke to the table, and then have one hand on your hardware yoke, and with the other hand you use the touch controller and can interact with the cockpit. So you don't need to ditch the cockpit hardware, but you can actually have something that you touch, and with the other hand, with the hand controller, interact with the virtual world. Now that's not so interesting. Alright, some users, especially the users that come here that have very elaborate setups at home with like 5 or 6 screens and hardware yoke and hardware throttle and whatever. From some of those users we get the feedback, why are you wasting your time on this? Who cares about this virtual reality fad? It's useless. I want my 6 screens and everything. And the answer to that is, Of course. And you should use whatever you think is right for you. And we want you to know that the development of X-Plane on different platforms, whether it is for the 6-screen hardware simulator, or for the virtual reality headset, or for your iPhone or your iPad, the development for all these systems is very, very closely related. And we could not develop one thing without bringing the other forward. So for example, the new user interface for X-Plane 11 that makes it so easy to use is based on the mobile version of X-Plane. So on the version of X-Plane for the iPad that got the new user interface first. The VR version, the virtual reality version, has this really great 3D immersive sound, and it is really necessary because when you turn your head, the direction the sound comes from changes in your headphones. But this is not something that is unique to the VR version, because once we have the new sound engine, it of course also works with your 6-screen hardware setup. You don't need the VR version to experience that. It's just something that we developed for it, but even people who don't use the VR version get the benefit from it. And that is especially true for the performance, because we all know we want more frames, we want more FPS. The simulator needs to run fast and smooth. We can't have the sim stutter. And this is something that is especially important for the VR version. So for the VR version, we're doing a massive cleanup of our 3D engine. I have a couple of slides towards the end about what we are doing there. And yes, we're doing this for the VR version, but every simulator user gets the benefit. So even if you never buy a VR headset and have your 6-screen simulator at home, you get better frames per second, and that's of course what we want. So for more info, as I said, come over, try it yourself, put it on and fly for 5 minutes and see see if you want to do this at home as well. And you can also check out the X-Plane official YouTube channel for a video that shows the interaction with VR and how to use the controllers and everything. I'm not going to show this video now, but of course you can find it on YouTube. All right, we are planning on releasing the VR version that we have here as a demo for Christmas. And now for the remaining 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about what we're looking at for next year, what we are doing after that. So of course, as I mentioned, especially for VR, we need more frames. That's what everybody wants. And the thing that we hear often is that people have a computer with lots of CPUs and they are not really being used, and they still get only 30 frames, and they get grumpy about it. So the situation, what it looks like in most of the modern computers that you buy nowadays with an 8-core, 6-core or 8-core processor, the situation inside your computer looks something like this. So you have one guy here with the shovel who is digging the hole, and a lot of guys standing around him. And there's some truth to this picture when you imagine it inside your computer. What is down there in the hole is the graphics card. So there's some way that the CPU, your processor, needs to interact with the graphics card. And right now, we are limited to doing this with only one shovel. All these guys here cannot dig in this hole. And I'm not going to go too much into the detail, but basically what X-Plane is using right now is a technology that is called OpenGL. And we are switching to a new driver stack that is called Vulkan. Vulkan is on the PC and on Mac, on the Mac platform. There's a similar API that is called Metal. That's this one. And if you're used to the Windows gaming world, you all have heard of DirectX before, and DirectX 12 is the same idea. They all basically do the same thing. I'm not going to go into much detail here, but I just wanted to visualize one thing, that right now, okay, down here is the graphics card that we need to talk to, and there's a very big driver here that interprets the OpenGL and does what it thinks is best for the graphics card. And X-Plane 11 talks to this driver, but has really no control over what is going on inside here. And with Vulkan, the picture changes a little bit and looks more like this. So the driver becomes kind of dumb, actually. The driver doesn't try to do as many things, and X-Plane gets more control over what is done. And what that gives us in OpenGL, you really have no idea what operation is going to be fast and what operation is going to take some time. And sometimes the results are surprising. You think something should be very easy and you tell the OpenGL driver to do it, and then everything comes crashing down and it takes, I don't know, 50 milliseconds to do it, and then it comes back. And when this happens, you may have 30 frames, you may have an indication of 30 frames per second, but what in reality happens, that half a second nothing happens, and in the other half of the second you get 29 frames. So over the course of the second, you had 30 frames per second, but for half of that second, nothing was happening. And this is what happens when you experience a stutter or micro stutter. Especially when you are in a turn, and it doesn't seem to be turning fluidly, but more like this, even though you have a high frame rate. And the reason that happens is exactly what I said. We tell the OpenGL driver to do something, and the result of how long it takes is surprising. And that is something that cannot or should not happen in Vulkan, because all calls are very, very small, and every operation has a guarantee for how long it should take and how fast it should be. And more importantly, it allows us to do the multi-threading and the locking ourselves. We don't care for the driver or what the driver might do there, and we can use multiple cores to talk to the GPU. So in this, to say in this picture, what we can do is we can have multiple shovels and get every CPU core a shovel to dig in the hole. And this is where we want to go. So of course the big question is, like in FSX, there now exist a lot of add-ons for X-Plane, and of course people are worried when we do a technology change in X-Plane, what happens to the add-ons. And basically what I can say right now is that of course OpenGL will be supported for the life of X-Plane 11. It's kind of like the transition to 64-bit. When we changed over to 64-bit, we also had 32-bit available as an option for the rest of X-Plane 10. And with the switch from OpenGL to Vulkan, it will be the same. Everything that is modeled like scenery, models and aircraft, that should just work. There should be no compatibility problem with that. And everything that that uses custom drawing to create cockpit instruments, we are providing a way for the add-on makers to keep that working, so that your favorite aircraft keeps working in the new environment. Everything that does 3D drawing, so for example, a weather program that draws its own clouds, they will need to adapt to the new environment. But the good thing is that we are already right now supplying the code and the SDK to the add-on makers, so that they can use the new technology for drawing, that they can already now start working to make their add-ons compatible for something that we haven't done yet. So we are giving the add-on makers a head start. So with X-Plane 11.10 we are shipping all the tools for the add-on makers already. So of course we have the word editor to create sceneries, to create airports. We have the FMOD SDK. FMOD is the technology that the add-on makers use to create the immersive sound. So engine sounds, all the sounds in the cockpit, clicking of switches and all of that. So yeah, here you see sound engineer recording the GPU ground power unit. So all these tools are available to the add-on makers right now. The new Blender exporter. Blender is the tool that most of the add-on makers use to create their 3D models. That is available now. The people who used to develop add-ons for FSX, most of them work in 3ds. We also have a free exporter for that now. And the new plugin API, what I said, 3D drawing to be compatible with the future. This is available right now, so all the add-on makers can start working right now for the next version of X-Plane already. So towards the end of the talk, I talked about a lot of different features today. Just to recap, when do I as a user get all this shiny new stuff? So the plans for the rest of the year, the 3,600 airports and the Las Vegas scenery I talked about, that is out already. That is the stable version that you can download today. X-Plane 11.10 is in beta now, so everything I told about all the other objects in the AutoGen scenery, the London objects, the London landmarks, the G1000 flight deck, everything I talked about, systems and airflow and aerodynamics and physics. All of that is in beta right now. Beta means a version that is not finalized yet, where there's still going to be a few rough edges in there. So if you are not an adventurous type, if you just want your simulator to just be stable and work, then you should probably wait and not get the beta now and just keep using the stable version and wait until we put 11.10 in the stable branch. But if you are adventurous and you love tinkering and tweaking and you want to be involved in the development of the simulator, then you can choose to take part in the beta program and try all these new features while we still work on them. Again, it's a decision whether you want it stable or whether you are adventurous and want to see the development as it happens. The plugin SDK for the add-on makers, this is out now, this is available as I speak. X-Plane with VR, the demo is here at FS Weekend, you can try it, and we're aiming to get it to you, to get it to every user for Christmas. So if you buy a VR headset, we want to have the software support out for that for Christmas. And the last couple of slides where I talked about multiple guys with multiple shovels digging in digging the hole faster. This is something we are doing next year. So we want to have a version with X-Plane using that new technology next year. All right, I'm at the end of my presentation. I will be here for questions while I pack my computer and everything, and then I'm going to go over to the main building again in the entrance area where we have the X-Plane PC with the VR headset where you can try it yourself. Thank you.
Can you already tell us which VR headsets will be supported?
Oh yeah, so we use a technology that is called OpenVR, and that is supported by both the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. So whether you get, and that is not only the headset but also the hand controllers, so whether you get the bigger controllers from HTC or the smaller controllers from Oculus, as long as it's supported by OpenVR, which both of the big ones are, we support them as well.
Okay. I think I know what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. But you're sitting still, right?
It doesn't matter what one I use?
For what? Exactly. So now you're looking away from the
Yeah, this is basic. Oh my gosh. Oh my freaking sweet baby Jesus. This is amazing.
If you like, you can stand up, but don't fall down.
But I really feel like I'm going to hit the wing. It's just absolutely... Oh, this is... like nothing I've ever experienced before.
Pre-flight check simulator.
I can imagine how wonderful and awesome that is. Can I just sit down on my chair now, or would I fall?
Oh, yes,
Okay. So I can just go like this.
Be careful, it's dangerous. That's it.
Guys, this is just freaking awesome. Okay, let's fly.
You want to see bigger planes? You can go to the hangar.
No, I want to fly the Skyhawk.
Okay.
Have you ever been in our hangar? No.
I showed.
It's big. You see a big plane there.
Oh, it's over there. Or can I just easily...
No, you
that's
can
fine.
just
How can I reset my view? Like to the front? Or?
just to the front and then. Oh, by the way, this is the hangar. If you.
Oh man.
This is where the planes are.
Guys, it just looks like freaking real. Like I'm on a chair in a hangar. It's just amazing. And this is also a wonderful
that's the
feature.
menu. That's the
Wonderful
menu.
feature.
Philip,
Yeah.
take over. Yeah, I'll take it from you. No problem. I'll take it from you. It's fine.
But Philip, I want to fly. I want to fly.
Okay, all right.
Or is there something else you'd like to show me that is...
No, wait, the hangar is nice, but right now I will just put you track.
Wonderful.
All right, close the door.
That's like...
Yep. Oh, yep.
Yeah. This is how I...
Now, you can try to track your teeth. That's what you need, but what's the point?
Exactly, yeah.
Wow, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
Man. Does it work? Or?
I don't know. Try the CDI. Try the CDI. I know the CDI works. Yeah, now it works. Altimeter, I don't know. Maybe you have to go up
But
and down.
I get the idea.
Well, you know what really? Oh yeah, those work. But what really works is try the ignition key, because the ignition key you can turn and you will feel that it gives a little jolt, right when it clicks.
Man. Oh man. And this? Well, this is just a gimmick, I guess.
Yeah, that's well you can take it.
Can I take
Look,
it?
yeah, just take like so. Yeah, and then you can look at your map.
Philip, this is awesome, but I would like to see my real iPad as a screen so I can use ForeFlight on my
Okay.
Is that coming in the future? That should be there.
ForeFlight, I don't think so. But this is just your map. Okay, put it, click, and you can attach it. Just put it on there and attach it. There you go.
Absolutely freaking awesome. Let's do this. Is my perfect?
No, it's off.
It's off. Why am I not going?
Is it in pause? I don't know. Maybe you have two cameras and you can.
I just give it another. Ah, there you go.
It's only a matter of software being able to
man, this is
finger, face. So I don't think
it's also just amazing to see how 3D the instruments are.
Yeah.
Like all the. Oh man, this is so real.
You have no idea about your body. That is just like it only sees like. I don't know why he put you at an airport with no scenery, but I can.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I can put you.
Oh yeah, can you put me in a? Well, it doesn't really matter, but.
Yeah, but I should get you somewhere in the scenery.
Just want to fly just one more circuit, just have a feel of.
Yeah. Not bad. Alright. I'm going to give you...
Thank you. Just put me anywhere. Just circuit-wise or something better. Or on the runway, that's fine as well.
Alright.
Can I go forward in my seat or?
Well, I think you just need to...
I just need a center. Yeah,
there you go.
Wonderful, wonderful.
What you're supposed to see. Yeah.
I heard from my guys that you are the expert in the expert. Correct?
That's right, yeah.
That's right. Okay. I have a simple question. I have a lot of data on a separate drive.
Like scenery or...
Scenery,
yeah.
waterfall, whatever. Normally, I have to copy to my just scenery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can exactly. You can edit mine.
Yeah.
You can go very close. It's working.
Okay.
You wish it.
It's very hard to read.
On the drive, then the external drive.
Within the explain.
Okay, yeah.
Well, not within the explain, but in the scenery.ini.
Tim, can you describe what it looks like?
Guys, it's like being in the Matrix. It's as real as it gets. I cannot describe how real it is. You feel like it's also you feel so confined, like in a Cessna Skyhawk. You really feel
Multiple companies out there.
some spaciousness almost. It's just extraordinary. Also, if you look down and you feel like you're gonna hit your head against the ceiling. It really has that presence to it. It's just
But
wonderful.
there's an entry there.
Yeah, this is the future, guys. It's the future.
It's still going to be there. So you can put an entry there to whatever. Exactly. It's kind of does. But that's inside does something else as well.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Because now I have
Infrared camera called
for my external device, which you go for the file, and if I
to the headset.
done this,
So you basically put the camera on the headset.
all the stuff, and put in the new one. So we're good. Okay.
With the absolute path, you can just leave it there. And so
I will try to follow it. This evening, no time for it. Tomorrow we have plenty of time.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Good.
Okay.
That's the thing.
With fly inside.
Yes, but only with FSX.
Yeah,
it's not explained. That's not explained.
But
Amazing. That's a good landing.
yeah, lots of practice.
Alright.
Why is it not sinking? Oh, it's already on the ground.
Yeah, you were just holding the nose gear.
I was just doing acrobatics and showing off.
Hang on. I'm going to blow your mind. Stand by.
You're going to blow my.
Yeah, I just need to blow your mind for a second.
Oh, please, Philip. Please do. Oh my freaking hell. Guys, this is.
Oh, awesome.
I guess you have to push them.
Everyone standing here needs to. Sorry.
There's a queue forming.
Yeah, sorry. I will stop. It's guys. I cannot wait for this to be in my own home.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, Philip.
Just for a quick look.
You should, Evanek, you should have that experience as well.
Oh, I already had it. Thanks. It's pretty awesome.
Wow, awesome. Hello everyone. So, Flight Simulator Weekend 2017. That is here in the Netherlands at Lelystad, which is a aviation museum here, as you can see. And this is where one of the biggest European flight simulator conventions are held. And I did a talk here with Evanek, which was really fun. Hey guys, we're about to do our lecture, Evanek and me, on the thrill and educational value of flight simming. So wish us luck. We are going to have a thrill as well. The screen is huge. We feel like Steve Jobs kind. Oh, sorry. It's huge.
Are you excited?
I'm excited. It's in Dutch though, so yeah, perhaps we're going to do a translation or whatever. But first in Dutch. Shall we start or not?
Yeah, I think we can get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, very good.
But I'd just like to give you a quick show of the exhibitions. I thought it was a little bit smaller. That was what I was expecting. But it's actually quite huge of a convention. A lot of cockpit builders, X-Plane VR. So here we go inside. As you can see, here is first off at the entrance is X-Plane with Philip by the X-Plane of the X-Plane developers team, who is demonstrating VR here. Which is really amazing, and I will show you just a video very soon of me trying VR. A lot of vendors here with software and stuff, which is cool, but not that special, I guess. Aerosoft is there with a lot of software to buy. We got drones. It was really nice. The museum is really cool. Aviodrome, as it is called. As you can see here, all the flight simmers are scattered around the museum, showcasing all of their good stuff, like 737 cockpits, which are really advanced. As you can see, tower controllers.
Big plate, you put it behind. It doesn't even matter whether it's 38 or 39 or 40, just put it behind.
So one of the things that really strike my attention is how many cockpit builders there actually are here, at least at this flight sim convention. It was quite amazing. So I just give you a very quick look into this particular Flight Simulator weekend convention, just to give you an impression of what you can find here also for next year. So let's go.